I thought it was nice to have James right over here, and there was no microphone here for a while, so I thought we should just put her in front of the empty Okay, yeah, I mean...
Good morning. Good morning. Oh, the way we do it in elementary school. Yeah, exactly. Oh, thank you so much for coming to this early Saturday morning adjunct panel. It is no surprise that the number of people who are adjuncting has been rising very steadily over the past few years. I have finished my PhD at Granade University in 2012. I have been adjuncting since then. As you will hear later, I usually have a course load of anywhere between 6 and 7 classes per semester at 4 to 5 colleges in 2 states. And this is not unique. Everyone on this panel has either been an adjunct for a number of years and graduated to the tenure track, or is still an adjunct after a number of years. So the way the panel will work is we have one full-length paper this morning from Andrew Granade. Following that, we have 5 shorter papers, and then after that, we will open the floor to questions and comments to everyone on the panel. So we're going to begin with Andrew Granade.
Thank you. And I'll apologize ahead of time. My allergies are getting the best of me. Sandy Graham told me it's milkweed. I was like, yeah, I didn't bring my Zyrtec. So I will be drinking a lot, and not that way, but water. It is Saturday. All right. In 2003, I was a freshly minted ABD student, ready to dip my toes into the vast ocean of unemployment. My wife was already finished with her vocal performance degree and had secured a position at Millikan University in Decatur, Illinois. It was about an hour away from our home in Champaign, Illinois. She knew they were looking for someone to teach 20th century music history to juniors in the program and suggested that I send in a CV. I did, and soon found myself in front of a classroom with almost no training for what I was about to do. During my 2 years at Millikan, I felt like a musicological mercenary. I'd make a targeted strike on the school 2 days a week, creating a base of operations in basically a broom closet outfitted with a desk. And quite literally, this is the computer I had in 2003. It would only boot up after the requisite sacrifices in about 12 minutes of the spinning ball of death. From there, I would deliver relief to students starving for knowledge of John Cage and Steve Reich, making sure to avoid the local academic government as much as possible. Even though I was there full-time by the end of my time at Millikan, I barely knew any of the faculty outside the 20th century music theorist and the dean who hired me. I was never asked to attend faculty meetings, never asked to voice any opinions about the school's direction, provide any service, and there was nothing in the way of support, either financial or developmental, in my time. In many ways, I was a ghost, and probably few realized I had left it when I went to my current position at UMKC. Yeah, my youngest son said, "Dad, that's a little scary." I said, "Don't do that." Although I felt isolated during my time there, I was not alone. A recent U.S. Department of Education survey discovered that there were around 762,000 professors at degree-granting institutions nationwide and the same number of adjunct instructors, but But that number doesn't tell the whole story. Another way to parse the data is to look at percentages. 30% of college university faculty are tenure track, 20% are full-time non-tenure track, and 50% are part-time non-tenure track. So if we adjust our numbers for that new data, we discover that there are 475,200 tenure track faculty versus 1,066,800 tenure track or contingent faculty. What's amazing then is that most colleges and universities focus their resources on 30% of their faculty. So as department chair for the past 6 years, these numbers and the trend that they represent have consumed me. With the reliance on contingent faculty growing, supporting them has become paramount in the way that I see my responsibilities of chair, and I would argue today your responsibilities if you hold a tenure track position. So today I'd like to offer a chair's perspective on contingent faculty through 3 lenses. First, I want to quickly survey the literature on how adjunct faculty see their role and their place in the academy. Second, I want to propose a flexible solution for professional development through the creation of communities of practice. And third, I want to decode some academic jargon for you to help equip you, whether you're contingent or full tenure track faculty, with some tools to advocate for these kinds of initiatives in your own colleges and universities. Let's start with some facts and figures from a survey conducted 2 years ago by the TIAA Institute. They discovered common perception among is that adjunct faculty members teach at multiple institutions, and we'll hear from Reba that indeed many do, but a full 79% of adjunct faculty actually work for a single college or university. I don't know what that little thing is, sorry. Hooray, Apple. 41% of adjunct faculty members report being very satisfied with their career, compared to 69% of tenured or tenure track faculty who are very satisfied with their career. This is a very disturbing percentage. And finally, 56% of adjunct faculty are very satisfied with the support for teaching, and only 23% are very satisfied with the support provided for professional development and career advancement. If these numbers don't worry you, you should just walk out right now. The question is, what can we learn from these findings and what can we do? First, by far the majority of adjunct faculty are connected to a single institution, which means that it is in that institution's best interest to keep those faculty connected, invested, and well-trained. We should default into thinking of adjunct faculty as committed to the institution where they work and find ways to support that commitment. Second, and connected to that first point, that those faculty are not happy in their career, which correlates to them being not happy with the institution. Much of that dissatisfaction comes from adjuncts feeling disconnected from the institutions where they teach. Joe Barry, in his book Reclaiming the Ivory Tower, contends that contingent faculty are one of the most isolated groups in the whole society. Many of us never get to know or compare notes with our colleagues. Part-time faculty are not expected to participate in the same functions as full-time faculty, such as advising, serving on college committees, or even holding office hours. Because of this lack of expectations, many adjunct faculty are rarely on campus, creating a situation that hinders full and part-time faculty collegiality and interactions with the academic processes of the colleges and universities. Beyond the feelings of the adjunct faculty member, the literature points to a general conclusion that student learning is negatively impacted by this lack of connection. The effect is not due to the quality of adjunct faculty members, but rather because adjunct faculty members generally teach the larger introductory classes and generally are not available to students outside of class time face-to-face. 15 years ago, Harrington and Shabik found that, quote, among students entering college in the fall semesters 97 to 2001, those not returning for the spring semester were more likely to have more than half their courses taught by part-time instructors. Ronco and Cahill suggest that adjunct faculty members often are not told about the instructional support services critical to first-in-time college students and may be unprepared to identify at-risk behaviors in students. In surveying the impact of introductory classes on students' decision on a major, Takacs and Chambliss find that, quote, faculty determine students' taste for an academic fields by acting as gatekeepers, either welcoming them into an area of knowledge, encouraging or inspiring them to explore it, or by raising the cost of entry so high as to effectively prohibit continuing in it. In other words, it is in an institution's best interest to invest heavily in its contingent faculty, because the literature shows that good adjunct teaching results in better retention, early detection of student issues, and earlier identification of majors, and these are all buzzwords for your administrators. These are the things that they are looking for. There's also evidence that adjunct faculty would welcome the investment. In Best Practices for Supporting Adjunct Faculty, Richard Lyons reported that the University of Louisville, fully 90% of adjuncts surveyed would be interested in attending faculty development programs. It's easy to extrapolate that percentage to other institutions, and it's a percentage that I've discovered in my own time as chair. When I became chair at UMKC, we had an adjunct faculty member who had gone through the Mission Creep Common among contingent faculty, Upon graduating with her PhD, this faculty member found a spot in our Introduction to Music History class. From there, as our student population grew and a few faculty took administrative positions, her position grew as well. One class here, another class there. Soon enough, she was a full-time adjunct faculty member, but one who arranged her schedule to teach only on Tuesdays and Thursdays and not come to campus any other day. As you can imagine, she was disconnected from the conservatory, a ghost in many ways, like I was in Millikan. I know. Nightmares tonight. I'll come back to her story in just a moment because I want to shift to discussing some solutions to these problems, and I'll be referencing ideas that I've used in her case and others that ultimately I'd like to encourage you to implement. Let's return first to lines 90%. Research clearly indicates that adjunct faculty value pedagogical training and adjunct work, particularly in core introductory classes, and it's pivotal to student success and retention. So why are opportunities not there for adjunct faculty? Most research shows that the opportunities actually do exist, particularly for the now common centers for teaching excellence that are on many college campuses. However, these opportunities are designed for tenure-track faculty. They are presented at a time that adjunct faculty cannot attend. So the first step in creating development opportunities is to consider access, to give adjunct faculty proper notification about the events and create them with flexible scheduling to promote participation. The second step is determining what should be covered in these development opportunities. After surveying the literature, I find 5 primary areas in which adjuncts desire training and that would be the most impactful. The first is student engagement. How do you, how do you increase the ways students interface and reflect on the course content during a lesson? In other words, adjunct faculty desire training on how to see and recognize student cues, such as willingness to interact, willingness to participate, lack thereof, and how to modulate student engagement levels to maximize learning. Second, the learning environment. How do you create a physical, academic, social atmosphere in a classroom setting that is conducive to learning? Adjuncts wish to learn how to create a classroom that is, quote, orderly and focused on learning where students feel physically and emotionally safe. And the daily routines, learning activities, and standards are appropriate for appropriate behavior are all designed to promote learning. Third, instructional variety. How do you incorporate varied techniques in teaching your course's content? This topic includes the planning of mixing different instructional activities such as discussion, facilitation of small group work, cooperative learning, demonstration, explanation, questioning, recitation within the context of a single lesson, as well as varying the physical movement with gesturing and eye contact, voice intonation. Instructional variety also includes the use of media and technology, learning materials, displays, and classroom space that encourages student involvement in problem solving and project-based learning. Fourth, access. The success of a college student with a disability depends partially on the teacher's attitude towards students with disabilities, which is determined in part by the teacher's knowledge of disabilities and experience with teaching those students. Specialists believe that collegiate instructors need training in more learner-focused strategies, augmented with instruction on a wide range of disabilities that faculty may encounter. And finally, technology. Many colleges embrace what I call the technology facade, just putting nice shiny things in the room and then not telling people how to use them. We need to help faculty keep pace with the dynamic tools of technology, especially while there are different levels of proficiency amongst faculty. So the final step is to create a system which aids in adjunct training and in their sense of belonging in an institution. So my suggestion is to create a community of practice, borrowing from a phrase from cognitive anthropologist Jean Lev and educational theorist Etienne Wigner. There are 4 people in this community, including the adjunct faculty member. So in addition to the adjunct faculty member, there's what's termed the faculty chair. This person does not have to be the department chair. Often it's good that it is not the department chair, but it does need to be someone who is a tenured faculty member invested in the contingent faculty. This person gets all the student information, all the faculty information, helps place adjunct faculty in courses that suit their abilities and their passions, and helps them with appropriate modes of delivery. In other words, you have a chair who oversees all the adjunct faculty, their evaluation, their placement, and so you protect an adjunct faculty member from any kind of retribution that sometimes happens amongst other faculty members. Second, a faculty developer. This person is tasked with creating the orientations for new contingent faculty, facilitating online and on-ground development workshops at times and places that work with contingent faculty schedules. They also help organize maybe an adjunct faculty newsletter or some other form of regular communication amongst adjunct faculty. And then finally, a faculty mentor. This is another contingent faculty member who has been at the institution for a long time, a more senior faculty member, who is the main point of contact for questions, helps introduce the new faculty member to the institutions and other facilities as well. With more people in these communities, faculty members know that people in the institutions have their back and are invested in their success. So how to get these practices implemented? Well, you have to use academic jargon against the administrators. Several key reasons why administrators give for hiring adjunct faculty members. Here are the main three that I've discovered. Cost control, right? Adjuncts are paid less than tenured track faculty, and so it's an easy way when budgets are being slashed to continue to cut your budget. Second, flexibility. Enrollment fluctuations and budget uncertainty make it easier to fill gaps with contingent faculty because you never know what classes you might need, so hiring someone 2 weeks before is easier. And finally, specific needs. So right now, class on entrepreneurship, where you can find that person, where you hire contingent faculty. Whatever is the course du jour, you fill with an adjunct faculty. In other words, underlying all of these, it's all about budget. So let's look at each one of these a little bit more specifically of how you talk about these with your administrators. Cost control. The savings from reduced wages is often taken up by some degree by having to constantly recruit and replace faculty members. That is not a cheap process. Even if you're just going out, you are extending resources to be able to find those people. And so you need to make that transparent about how much it is spent when you have a turnover and you're having to train and find contingent faculty every year that are new people. You have to put that in the face of the administrators. Second, flexibility. Enrollment fluctuations can be brought down, if you go back to the beginning of this presentation, by having outstanding teaching early in a student's time in those introductory classes, because they'd be likely to, and this is the academic jargon, melt from the degree, people who just kind of disappear. Plus, we know that students major in a professor, so outstanding teaching in intro classes can also swell the size of the major and increase, this is another academic jargon, credit hour production. Most of budgets are actually based and generated on how many credit hours your unit happens to produce. So the more people that you have in your major and in taking your classes, the more credits you're producing, the more budget you are producing. So you want the best people, the best trained people to be teaching those big introductory classes because you're increasing your budget. You also, by investing in these adjuncts, increase the success of first-generation college students, which is another key metric for administration to see how well your degree is doing. And so having those people who are invested and know what to do with those first-generation college students and any students with disability, any who are already at risk, then having people who are trained is going to increase the number of people in your major. Finally, specific needs. Most administrators are cutting staff to save on budgets. So having faculty there long-term means that you have faculty who not understand the institution's mission. They also know procedures tied to grade reporting, problem reporting structures, room assignments, rules, regulations, support services. In other words, it's just more efficient. So if you're cutting staff and you're cutting contingent faculty, you're cutting yourself off at the feet. So having people who are there long-term that you've invested in can create a more efficient kind of delivery of education. So let's return to my Let's return to my faculty member. Working as her chair, making sure that she was teaching classes that fit her skill set, I even assigned her to guide seniors and master's level projects because she was excellent at working, still is, excellent at working one-on-one with students. I connected her to our Center for Teaching Excellence, and I made certain to include her in departmental gatherings, both formal and informal. 2 years ago, she began mentoring another full-time non-tenure track faculty member, increasing her community of practice and passing on her knowledge and skills. And today, although she still rightly shakes her fist at the administration and the choices it makes regarding how UMKC delivers education, she does so from the inside, part of the academic community, a ghost no longer. Thank you.
So next we have a paper by Samantha Bassler, who could not be here in person. So for all intents and purposes, this is Samantha Bassler right now.
First of all, I'm grateful that my paper is being read at the conference, and I'm sorry to be unable to attend or present by Skype, which we also tried to make happen. I commend the organizers on providing the live stream options, the active Twitter crowd for promoting online discussion, and for colleagues such as Andrew Delantonio for sharing their thoughts in person and online. I would also like to thank Reba Wisner and the colleagues on the panel for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts. I am eager to continue these discussions virtually or at future conferences and welcome emails or informal chats. The text of the talk is actually posted on my Facebook timeline with my email address, so please do get in touch. In recent years, music conference sessions have explored issues of work-life balance, labor, and contingent faculty, or adjuncts, and disability in music pedagogy. Presenters and delegates have discussed the status, experiences, and struggles of adjuncts from myriad perspectives. In one session, chaired by Felicia Miyakawa, presenters shared their experiences of being an adjunct faculty from a positive perspective. Similar perspectives, especially a sentiment of there is more than one way to be a musicologist, were expressed at the Public Musicology Conference organized by Eric Hung at Westminster Choir College. An AMS session sponsored by the Committee on the Status of Women explored the real-life difficulties of adjuncts and the relationship of these difficulties to feminism and other frameworks sensitive to marginalization, including disability studies. The takeaway was that the situation of adjuncts in the academy is complicated, and while an adjunct position might be ideal for some lifestyles, it comes laden with marginalizations. In a tense and personal moment, a colleague insisted that all adjuncts should walk out of universities everywhere and refuse to work until there were better circumstances, such as better wages and benefits. All of this demonstrates that the discipline of musicology and the AMS is aware of these difficulties faced by myself and other contingent faculty, and that many care about what the adjunct workforce does and how their contributions affect the education of their students. As an adjunct faculty member since 2006, I know well the negative implications of my position. I realize that I have a certain amount of privilege that enables me to work relatively happily as an adjunct. I have a spouse with a full-time salaried position in another field, graphic design, and a large percentage of my income flow is not from teaching music history in a university classroom setting, but from my Brooklyn music studio of private piano students. I have sympathy with my colleague who recommended that all adjuncts walk out permanently until there are better conditions. It is hard to be an adjunct. However, as a disability rights activist and a scholar of music and disability studies, and especially as a disabled American and faculty member with multiple lifelong autoimmune diseases, I'm used to finding another way to make the life that I want to live, despite difficulties, which I accept as par for the course. And it could be better, not only for myself and for other adjuncts, but also for tenured faculty and administration, and especially for the students. As long as adjuncts are teaching and impacting students, it is prudent to create accommodations to make better the situation of adjuncts and enable them to do a better job. As Andrew Dell'Antonio demonstrated yesterday, and I thank him very much for his excellent talk for many reasons, especially for defining my many important terms in disability studies, disability studies shares language, framework, and culture with other humanities disciplines, and subsequently has much to offer for anyone willing to shift their perspective and rethink the norm. In disability studies, we have a concept of the narrative prosthesis, such as in literature when a disabled character serves as a foil for an able-bodied character, emphasizing the normalcy and agency of the able-bodied character. Using a metaphor of the university teaching workforce as a body, I see contingent faculty functioning as the necessary prosthesis of the larger academic body, which makes the larger academic body function normally, in quotes. This metaphor demonstrates how important it is to value and support contingent faculty with appropriate accommodations. If better accommodations were possible, the prosthesis of contingent faculty could better contribute to the larger body and the wider discipline with the services and work that the tenured or full-time faculty body cannot perform alone. This requires a shift in perspective towards contingent faculty as not an other to the academic body's normal, and acceptance of the adjunct professor as an alternative career path created because of a need in the academic body. The attitudes toward adjuncts can be one of pity, a pity that I, as a disabled American, recognize immediately. The adjunct professor is not suffering from a malign disease, but is doing important work. In the fine arts, such as in graphic design, freelancing is not shameful. Many graphic designers are adjunct professors while simultaneously doing work in other industries, and they are respected for the real-world experience they provide. Adjuncting can be a viable choice and alternative career path, and adjuncts have a lot to offer to their university departments. Disability and adjuncting both require creativity and ingenuity to get the job done. So many times I have found creative ways to complete tasks in spite of my disability, but mostly because of it. Similarly, So many times I have run into problems due to lack of access as an adjunct, but I refuse to give up and find myriad solutions for the same task. I will now close with some recommendations for greater accessibility in music courses and music departments. Adjuncts need to feel that their place in the academy and in the university music department is important and valued. Once I shifted perspective on my disabilities and saw my life as a rich human experience despite lacking normalcy, I was empowered to make a difference and to create ways in which I could function and still live the life I want. Adjunct professors do provide important services. We teach classes that other faculty members cannot or will not teach. I know money is an issue, of course it is, but adjuncts need to have the proper resources to teach these classes: paper, markers, textbooks, perhaps a TA, office space, computer and printer access, technology access, etc. And because their lifestyle is so different, full-time faculty need to shift expectations on what an adjunct can accomplish each semester while traveling to different universities on multiple part-time salaries. Adjuncts need to have support for addressing student concerns. Adjuncts should be included in conversations about these concerns whenever possible. Since adjuncts do a lot of traveling and may not be available for in-person meetings, adopting a Google Drive of important documents and resources or holding virtual meetings via Skype or Google Hangouts whenever possible are good substitutes. It's something a few of us will be talking about later too. Adjuncts need to be educated about the Americans with Disabilities Act and how to properly accommodate students with disabilities. Most music classes by default are less accessible to students with auditory or visual disabilities, and many adjuncts do not have the experience, knowledge, or support to fully support accessibility for the wide range of student disabilities. Similarly, contingent faculty members with disabilities may not have accommodations available for them as an adjunct and struggle to provide their students with the best support while they are not receiving support themselves. All faculty should be educated on how to provide students with disabilities, and we at the Music and Disability Study Group have resources available on our WordPress site to provide assistance. And I know the AMS Pedagogy Study Group is well aware of the necessity of these accommodations and seeks ways to find new ways to make them more accessible. University music departments should have an online resources folder of teaching resources for adjuncts, syllabi handouts, past course materials, and exams. And that folder should include recommendations for accommodating students with disabilities, clear university policies on accommodating these students, and contact information and directions to the University Disability Services Office. And university music departments should do whatever they can to offer adjuncts support, such as research funding, recognition for their valuable contributions in teaching, and resolve to increase wages on a regular basis. Finally, university music departments need to do whatever they can to eradicate all forms of marginalization, including ableism, and should train their faculty and staff members the rights owed to disabled faculty and students through protections such as the Americans with Disabilities Act. I think together with shifting the perspective on the adjunct's place within the academy, providing more resources and assistance to adjuncts, increasing wages and providing funding whenever possible, and also supplying clear accommodations for the adjunct's work and clear policies on how to deal with the faculty and students with disabilities, the situation of the adjunct and their service as the necessary prosthesis to the academic body would improve greatly. Such improvements would benefit not only adjunct faculty, but especially students. If adjuncts can do a better job, students will learn more and will have a better education, which will improve the entire culture of scholarship and the academy. Thank you.
So next we have Paula Bishop.
while that's coming up, I'll just explain. I think I'm part entertainment and part motivational speech for you. We saw it work once, so.
Reconnect. What do we do?
It's not the HDMI.
Now it works?
Okay. I obnoxiously put my various titles, because just to demonstrate that, you know, even though I'm full-time right now, that I've been that contingent space and I'll be back there soon, so, and that's kind of the life of a contingent faculty. So show of hands, how many of you have a backpack like this? Yeah, okay. In the next 8 minutes, I want to convince you to lighten that load physically, that was for you, pedagogically, and emotionally. I'll use clouds, streams, trees, an airplane, and bags of money to hopefully persuade you to let go. In the process of letting go, you'll be indulging in the self-care that you deserve, that will keep you healthy both physically and emotionally, and that will make you a better educator. So our backpacks are filled with CDs, DVDs, books, grade books, cables, whiteboard markers, lunch. Mine has socks in it, and so on. One of the heaviest items we carry is our laptop. Now, obviously, you could replace that with, I'm not going to pick this up because I'm sure it'll undo itself, but a tablet. But that's not always financially possible. Another solution is to use the classroom computer. So you copy your slides on a flash drive, or use a cloud-based service. I'm not going to go into the details. I think Alex is going to cover some of that. So you could use something like Dropbox, or you could create your slides in one of the online slide presentation systems such as Prezi. To replace the CDs in your backpack, check with your institution's library, because you could check out the CD and return it at the end of class, but many libraries will digitize the music for which they own a physical copy and stream it through your classroom management system or your learning management system. They may also have Naxos, a Naxos license, which would give you more access to even more music and can be used in your classroom, though please do check with your librarians first. Streaming services like Amazon Music and iTunes seem like the right answers, but the legal waters are really murky here. Some people interpret the Fair Use Act as granting educators the right to stream music in their classroom, yet others have a less than generous reading of the Act and the license agreements. If you want to explore this option, consult a lawyer. The same can be said about videos. If your library owns a physical copy, generally they can digitize it and stream it to your classroom. YouTube is also a good option, but as we all know, videos come and go, especially because of copyright infringement, either real or perceived. With other services, the same fair use issues arise with videos as with recordings. So when it comes to the pedagogical aspects of your metaphorical backpack, course prep and grading are the two major time sucks. In both cases, we can learn to be smarter and more efficient. So, all right, true confession, I used to be that person who started with the calendar, mapped out the dates of the final and midterm exams, a few quizzes, a research paper, holidays, going to conferences, and so on. Then I would look at the table of contents of the textbook and try to squeeze the units of study into 14 weeks, or sometimes 15 weeks. Since I have a strong compulsion to line things up with weeks, sometimes I stretched or shrunk a unit based on getting it to start at the beginning of a week. Then I would come up with some assignments. Finally, I would madly scramble to read everything on that topic. So what was missing from all this meticulous planning was why. Why am I giving these assignments and exams? What are the pedagogical purposes? What skills and or knowledge should be demonstrated and how? Are the assignments for learning a new skill, for demonstrating what has been learned, or just to fill the grade book? So these days, I start with the end goal in mind. I ask myself, what are the big questions that this course is trying to answer, and why do they matter? Then I develop outcomes for the course. Now, outcomes are not vague goals such as students will understand concept X, or students will demonstrate an understanding of concept X. Instead, outcomes use active verbs. So here's a little before and after. Students will understand. Students will be able to describe verbally and in writing how, and so on. So next, I define the evidence that will show the outcome, such as tests, essays, composition assignments, always keeping in mind the goals of the course. I use noted education researcher John Bean's book and other sources to find creative ways to engage students in learning and to assess their progress. With the outcomes and evidence in mind, I develop units of study and make them the right amount of time to achieve the learning goals that I've set. I keep in mind what material has to be introduced or what skills learned before we can move to the next unit of study or before students can begin a particular assignment. Finally, I plan out the units and due dates of assignments. With a set of learning priorities in place, I can focus on what I actually need to learn or refresh on and not get sucked down the rabbit hole, though it is kind of fun to go there. As an aside, this method has helped me make informed decisions about what stays and what goes when we inevitably lose days to snow in the spring here in Boston. The next piece of the puzzle is grading. That doesn't look like a puzzle piece, I know. If you know what the goals of the course and assignments are, you can grade to those goals. For instance, if the goal of the assignment is to demonstrate an understanding of exposition versus development in a music appreciation class, why would you spend time correcting their grammar or critiquing their word choices? Why fret over the fact that they didn't note that there are plenty of exceptions to the two-themed exposition? It's a music appreciation class. So focus on the forest, not the trees. Second, grade to the expectation level of the assignment. I told you there would be bags of money. John Bean describes two basic levels of his assignments and their expectations, high stakes and low stakes. And I'm going to wildly oversimplify his work here and say that he says that high expectations mean more work for the students and for us. Low expectations means less work for both. So I'll add also that as contingent faculty, you are not paid enough to give up all of your free time. And if you are, please can hire me too. You're not paid enough to give up all of your free time to grading. So apply the amount of effort that matches the expectations and the grade weight of the assignment. Here's your tough love speech. You are also not paid enough to edit their papers. Students don't learn to spot and correct the errors themselves when you thoroughly copy edit their paper. Consider marking 2 spots and telling them they have a lot of errors of type X, that you have pointed out 2 examples and that you expect them to find and correct the others. Finally, if you haven't scaffolded the assignment, which is a discussion for another day, or asked for revisions, what's the point in doing all that copy editing? So last but not least, in any way, is the emotional load in our backpacks. We are dedicated and compassionate educators. We love our subject area, and we likely had a different outcome in mind when we went to grad school. But the reality is that adjunct work is draining, emotionally and financially. It can be devastating to our physical health and wreck our family life. That's kind of the sad part. So, imagine that your career is an airplane, and you're the pilot. You know the best cruising altitude, maximum airspeed, the weight of the fully fueled airplane, and so on. In the air, you make crucial decisions based on the known limits of your aircraft. You always have backup plans for emergencies. So do the same with yourself and with your job. Know your limits and have a backup plan. And like the instructions from the flight attendants, in case of we should all do this together, right? In case of a loss of cabin pressure, put your oxygen mask on first and then assist others. In other words, take the steps necessary to ensure your own health and well-being. There's no excuse not to. One of the most powerful ideas I've come across in the last few years is a TED Talk by Simon Sinek. In it, he says that great leaders and companies don't start with what they do or make, but with why. The why is their purpose for existing, not why they make a product or provide a service. He uses Apple as an example. They believe in changing the status quo and providing the consumer with a great experience. They just happen to make computers. So just as you should do when you're designing your courses and your assignments, know your personal why. It will give you the framework to know what your limits are. With that, you can make decisions that protect and empower you and enable you to be the best educator and human being that you can be. So there's the resources. I also have a page of some other resources. If you're interested, you can stop by and see me afterwards and I will give them to you. So thank you.
So next we have Alex Ludwig as Alex Ludwig.